Hello and blessings to all the participants of this third global symposium on the new paradigm of sentience and consciousness of the Laszlo Institute. And it's so profound and so important for the well-being of humanity. It's a massive pleasure and honor to be part of this process and really wishing blessings to every participant. It's so crucial for humanity. Thank you, Laszlo Institute, for putting this together. And also to blessings to all of humanity and all of creation. All should be well. So with that in mind, my name's David Geffen. I'm actually an Orthodox rabbi, and I was asked to present the Jewish understanding of the topics being presented in this symposium. And with that in mind, I'd like to start off with the first idea of God. What is the nature of God? So fortunately, in the Bible, we have a definition of God, as it were, and that is in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, and it's there. God is crescendo, God is one. And that is the Bible's sort of like main definition of God, which in the Jewish custom is to say this verse and the chapter within this verse, or within that the verses contain within, every morning and every evening before we go to sleep. So this verse is telling us what is the nature of God. God is one. One meaning everything coming together in harmony, the perfect harmony of all energies. So this God, which is one, has always existed and will always exist. And that, in fact, is amazing, that things exist and always have existed and will exist is quite a miraculous thought to ponder in itself. Didn't have to exist, but things always existed and we are here. Existence exists and always will do. So this powerful God is so powerful that includes everything that we can imagine, that we couldn't live with God directly. It's like trying to live on the sun's surface. You just get burnt straight away. So if you imagine a white piece of paper which represents the light of God, it would be impossible to live with that light. So what God did was, in the creation process, was to restrict himself and create an area where he wasn't so present. And that area is where all the universes were built. And it's called Olam. The universe in Hebrew is called Olam, which actually means, if you go to the root of the word, it means hidden. God hid himself, as it were, and creating that space enabled us to exist. All these understandings of the creative process are part of introducing different levels of consciousness that I want to talk about, and how this Judaism fits very much into the concepts of this new paradigm which the Laszlo Institute is developing for humanity in a way that humanity can understand it. So what I'm talking about here and will be talking about is based on the teachings of the Zohar, which is a mystical work ascribed to Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai in a couple of thousand years ago, roughly, and was published around 800 years ago, and in it has an explanation of the deeper ideas, the secrets, the spiritual secrets behind all these verses in the Bible. So in the Zohar, which is explained by another book called Eitz Chaim, from which I'm getting all these ideas that I'm sharing with you, it describes 5 levels of creation. 5 universes were created, and at the same time, 5 inner souls were created from within us. So there's 5 universes that surround us and 5 inner souls within. And I think I'd like to share a screen to be able to illustrate that idea. Share. So here you've got your white paper on the outside representing the infinite, all-powerful God of oneness. And then we couldn't exist with that, so he sort of pulled himself away and leaving a circle in the middle there for us to be able to exist within that circle. So with that in mind, at the very top, he then shone a filtered version of his light, something which could exist in this universe. And that level 1 is called the primordial being, Adam Kadmon in Hebrew. And it's really one being that contains this light. And you can't see any form of pluralism there. It's so close to the infinite. It's the ultimate, very transcendental, very up there, one being with all the pleasure and joy of experience that oneness at that level has. It's actually the goal of humanity, is to reach that level of oneness and experience. And when we are one, we resonate with the ultimate one. It doesn't mean a oneness in which all of us are the same, but a oneness in which it's like you look at a human being, it's got lots of different parts making a human being, but you see one human being. However, the parts even there aren't so clear what they are, because there's such a unity of energy and love and well-being. On level 2, already you start seeing the parts of this being. It's still very spiritual at levels 1 and 2. Physicality only comes along at levels 3, 4, and 5, or pluralism, etc., as will be explained. So at level 2, you start seeing various lights that are the components of this one being. In particular, there are 10 foundation lights, and if people have heard of the Sphirot, these 10 Sphirot, the 10 foundation lights that are the foundation components of level 1, that being. And then on level 3, finally, these 10 foundation lights, which you couldn't really tell the difference between the lights on level 2, they become part of a pluralistic creation where there are different sort of things that you can identify in them. And when it says in the Bible, in the beginning, it's referring primarily to this stage, level 3. Why? Because it's at this stage time really was created. In levels 1 and 2, things were very spiritual and non-physical, and we know from E equals MC squared that time is a function of physicality. So physicality and pluralism only started at really level 3 level, where it says in the beginning, and then we get to level 4, which is more getting down to individual beings like angels, their souls, different souls, not things flying around with wings, but different souls and soul energies, including the world of emotions and love and things like that, different qualities of consciousness. And then finally, at the level 5, you have the physical level, where everything has its own soul as well. And at this level, the soul in our blood that gives us life, that's where the soul is at this level. And the universe level, every being, whether it be the sun or a stone or a human being, has its various souls to make it be what it is, to have the energy to drive it through existence that it is. So there are 5 levels of universe, starting with the very abstract for us, level 1, this one being so close to the infinite light, it's touching it, but it's still a filtered down version, a finite version. And it goes all the way down to level 5. Those are the universes. And then from those universes, that fills up the whole area of this black area, which is the area in which all these lights can start forming into the various universes and life forms that exist. And that is a very big area. And so too, we have inner souls. So I'm going to start with level 5. So level 5 is the soul of the blood. Level 4 is the soul of emotions and angels and relationships. And level 3 is the soul of the mind. Really, at this level, we can first start to appreciate the idea of oneness. On level 5, it's hard. There, if you do a good deed, from our perspective, helping a person out, we can be helping the person, but not necessarily thinking or being mindful or heartful of oneness. Just helping somebody, it's a nice thing to do, but it's only really in the level of 3 that the mind can start conceptualizing new paradigms, as is this symposium, where you really appreciate the idea of oneness. But that's really on the level of what I understand in terms of the words consciousness and sentience. That's on the level of consciousness, where the mind is able to put together ideas. It's pretty exciting, but it's still at the level of the lower level of awareness of ideas and knowledge. Level 2 is when we're in the zone, when suddenly when suddenly back into one being, and we're in the zone and we realize it's all one and we feel connected and everything's coming together, and suddenly we see we're just all in the zone. So in terms of my understanding, level 2 is already a one being that requires humanity to be able to really experience that. In other words, I can think about it, I can have a sense of it, I can taste it from a distance, but the real level 2 is actually a level which takes people coming together to start really experiencing the idea of oneness. It's that moment. I remember once I was quoting Aristotle to my wife, and I said, I think Aristotle said that we are one soul in 2 bodies. And then my wife looked at me and she said, ooh. And suddenly we were one soul in 2 bodies, and we looked at each other and felt that level. We were in the zone. It just lifted us to a high level. And that's just 2 people. Can you imagine that with 10 people or 100 or our symposium or the whole world? It's a very high level. And then suddenly those separate sort of consciousness, sentient sort of experiences, which are sort of somehow shared synergetically, whatever, it becomes one level of consciousness at the highest level, which is something so far from our understanding, but it takes all of humanity to be able to experience that. And those are the 5 levels of creation, the 5 levels of the soul. And in so doing, I think that sentiences would be on level 2 and consciousness will be level 3, if I understand right. And level 1 is just when we all are one being in harmony. So in my world, which is called the Loving World, it's an organization where we train teachers around the world to learn what it takes to build a loving world. So we've actually built the whole curriculum on levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. Level 1 is so way out, I have no idea. It's too big, and we'll wait for that down the road. So levels 2, 3, 4, and 5 we call the humanity being head, heart, and hand. And the reason why I'm going into this is because I think it's important to show how these levels of consciousness can be shared with humanity in a very practical level. And so we call level 2 humanity being, level 3 head, level 4 heart, level 5 hand. So the humanity being is comes from the idea, just like a human being is all these different parts working together in harmony. And there's no jealousy, by the way, in this hierarchy. Like, we don't actually need the hand to live. The heart is more important. Without heart, you die. Without hand, you can survive. It's not a full experience of being a human, but it's not like, it's not crucial, the hand. But nevertheless, the hand, even though it's less crucial, isn't jealous of the heart. And the heart isn't arrogant towards the hand. I'm the heart. There's a beautiful harmony, and nothing from the little toenail all the way through to our gray brain cells. There's no jealousy there. And also there's a beautiful system whereby we share resources and at the same time have to look after our own individual health. So they're sharing an individual survival of all the parts working together in harmony. So that model of the human being, which initially, by the way, comes from the number 1 level, that initial primordial being, Adam HaKadmon in Hebrew, is the same structure spiritually as the physical human being as we come down to level 5 and all the components there within. So it's already just filtering down each level and then putting them together makes the human being. So anyway, the humanity being is just like the human being is all these different parts working together in harmony. The humanity being is all the different parts of humanity working together in harmony. So with that in mind, and I can stop sharing screen, I suppose. With that in mind, we can now define terms which normally are very controversial. Who are you to say what this and that and the other is? But now become very simple and quite universal. Good and bad. Good is that which brings the humanity being together in well-being, and bad is that which pulls it apart and creates great disruption and thereby, of course, unwell-being. So now we can share terms, and whether you're in a Jewish synagogue or a Catholic, Muslim, Hindu, atheist environment, whatever the background, we now have a sense of what is good and bad that we can agree upon. This is sort of a universal definition. And then head, how can we communicate effectively with every part of humanity being? Heart, how do we crave the well-being of every part of humanity being? And hand, practically speaking, what can we do to make the humanity being thrive? As my wife would say, it's nice that you say, I love you, level 4, but the dishes are dirty, level 5. So we have this system, and we've developed a curriculum to strengthen each of these 4 levels based on 8 virtues, 2 virtues for each level. So there's respect and compassion for the humanity being, seeing the good in every part of the humanity being, and compassion, how to deal with our weaknesses and differences. And on the head level, there's listening and kindness. Listening is obviously important for communication at the head level, to communicate ideas and have these new paradigms developed in this symposium, etc. But also you need kindness, because if there isn't kindness, then people aren't prepared to open up and really share what they feel. So it's very important to develop a kind atmosphere. And then comes the level of heart, which is gratitude for what I get, but also love, caring for what you have and wanting to see you thrive and taking pleasure in that and connecting ourselves. I guess love is the drive to pull everything together, and that's why we're calling ourselves Loving World. And under the Loving World, there's Loving Classroom, Loving Workplace, and so on and so forth. And then finally, on the hand level, is friendship within the classroom, personal relationships, making sure they work well, and care for the bigger picture, the macro picture, the world, and all these different universes. So that's what we teach. But the point I'm saying is we can take these very complicated sort of, but they're not that complicated, but this structure of these different levels, and start doing things which strengthen these levels and thereby make us more aware of these levels and have a sensual feeling about these levels, and then start living them. And that brings down the light into our being, and then we find well-being. So when we're focused on all these lights and how they integrate with each other, then that brings well-being for humanity. So it is possible to convert all these high ideas into a curriculum which is part of the well-being of humanity, from the very physical level up to very, very spiritual, gorgeous. In fact, our writings say that the goal of creation is to be one, but also to take great pleasure in that existence of oneness. It's a perfect state of being, very joyful and loving and one. And so all these different levels can be experienced on a physical, in the classroom, and humanity can learn this. So what's being done here at the Laszlo Institute is very teachable throughout humanity. We can train teachers in these ideas, and then the world becomes very loving and connects to all these levels for a very high level of well-being and experiential fulfillment. Well, that's it really. Here's my 20 minutes are up, and it's the Jewish overview as the levels of consciousness and how it fits into the new paradigm of the Laszlo Institute for the sensual experience and the consciousness. So there we have it. I'll finish off with blessings again, just like we started. Blessings to everybody, that all your projects would be loving and beautifully, deeply successful, impacting the world. Love you. Bye.